At 9:17 tonight, a 27-year-old aide held a phone 6 inches from my face and said, "Just give them something sweet, Mr. K, tell them what life was like back then." I looked at the red recording light, and my stomach dropped. 95 years on this earth, and that tiny light was the first thing in months that made me want to stand up and walk out. Not because I was angry at her. Because I suddenly realized I didn't recognize the world I'd survived. If you're watching this, I want you to know something right away. I'm not here to complain about kids these days. I'm here because I'm scared for you. And I'm scared for me, too. My name is John. That's what my papers say, anyway. The name I was born with got lost somewhere between war and a crowded dock. In America, John was easier to pronounce. Easier to hire. Easier to ignore. Tonight I'm 95, my hands shake when the room gets too cold, and I live in a place that smells like lemon cleaner and quiet. The aide, her name is Emma, meant well. She asked if we could record a little story for her church group, so people can feel hopeful. Then she tilted the phone and said, "Start with 1963. Everyone loves that." I almost did it. I almost gave her the version you can swallow in 30 seconds. Then she said, "And maybe end with a lesson, like, be grateful." That's when my voice came out sharper than I expected. In 1963 we had nothing, I told her, and we were happy. Today you have everything, and you don't even know where to put your hands. Her eyes widened. She lowered the phone. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I know," I said, and my throat tightened. That's the problem. Nobody means anything anymore. It's all content. So I did something I haven't done in years. I reached under my mattress and pulled out a flat brown envelope, the kind you use to mail photographs in. The corners are soft from being touched, then shoved back into hiding. Emma leaned in. "What is that?" "It's the only thing I've kept the same way for 63 years, I said. "And I'm going to open it for you, but I need you to do one thing first." "What?" "Turn the phone over," I told her. "Face down. We're going to talk like humans for once." She hesitated. That was my first little battle with the modern world, asking someone to choose me over a screen. And I had my own choice to make, too. I could stay pleasant, let her post a tidy clip, and go back to my quiet. Or I could tell the truth and risk being misunderstood, risk sounding bitter when what I really am is lonely. I watched her thumb hover. Then she put the phone on the table, black glass staring at the ceiling. Something in my chest loosened. Not joy, just room to breathe. "Okay," she said softly. "I'm listening. So let me take you there. Not to the postcards. To the real 1963. I was 32, living in a walk-up in Queens. The hallway smelled like cabbage and coffee. I worked days at a small machine shop, nights driving a delivery truck when the extra hours were there. My wife, Mary, kept our home warm with things she couldn't buy, a clean table, a pot that never stayed empty for long, and a patience I hadn't earned. We were poor in the honest way. You mend socks. You save string. A winter coat is a decision you make once a decade. I remember standing at the sink, pretending to wash a cup longer than necessary because I didn't want Mary to see me count coins in my palm. I wasn't afraid of hunger as much as I was afraid of failing her in the only country that had given me a second chance. Then, one Friday, the shop owner called 3 of us into his office. He didn't yell. That's how you knew it was bad. He looked at the floor and said, "Boys, I can't keep you all. Not with the orders like this. I walked home with my hands in my pockets and my shoulders trying to become smaller. When I came in, Mary was stirring a thin soup. She saw my face and didn't ask right away. She just touched my cheek like she was checking if I was still there. "How bad?" she asked. "Bad," I said. "Maybe weeks." She nodded once. No drama. Just the calm of someone who knows love is built for weather. Then there was a knock. 3 short taps. It was Frank from down the hall, big hands, quiet eyes. He didn't step inside. He just held out a paper bag. "Mary, I got too much," he said, like that explained everything. "Take it before my wife throws it at me." Inside was a jar of peanut butter, 2 apples, and a pair of little socks still tied with a string. I stared, ashamed and grateful at the same time. Frank saw it and shook his head. "Don't," he said. "Last month you fixed my radiator. This is the same thing." After he left, Mary set the bag on the table like it was gold. Then she took 1 apple, cut it into 4 pieces, and put 3 on a plate. "For tomorrow," she said. She held up the last slice and smiled at me. "This one is for tonight. Because we're still here. That's what I mean when I say we were happy. Not cheerful. Not careless. Happy in the way a man is happy when he knows he's not alone in his fear. Here's the part one didn't understand until I was old. I had a choice in that kitchen, too. I could let shame harden me, lock my love behind my teeth the way war taught me. Or I could accept help and stay soft enough to be held. In 1963, I chose wrong more times than I chose right. And the bill for those choices came due later, paid in silence and distance. Emma is still sitting across from me now, the phone face down between us like a truce. My fingers are on the flap of that brown envelope. I haven't opened it yet. Because once I do, we're not talking about history anymore. We're talking about Mary, and the night she finally said, "John, I can't live next to you if you won't live with me." The envelope fought me. I slid a fingernail under the flap, and the paper only bent and creaked, like it was warning me not to wake what I'd put to sleep. Across the little table, Emma, 27, kind eyes, church lady patience, hovered with her hands half raised, ready to help. "Do you want me to open it?" she asked. I pulled it back to my chest. "No," I said too sharply. Then I saw her face fall, and the anger drained out of me. "I'm sorry," I added, softer. "This is mine to open. If I hand it to someone else, I'll pretend it never mattered. If you're watching, I need you to understand something right away. At 95, memory isn't a straight road. It's a drawer full of loose buttons. You reach in for one, and sometimes you grab the right piece, sometimes you nick your finger on something you forgot was there. But the body remembers what the mind tries to file away. The smell of cheap coffee. The click of a radiator. The way a hallway sounds when you're walking home without a paycheck. I wasn't born John. I was born with a name that belongs to another alphabet and another life. My father carried a scar he never explained, and my mother carried rules instead of lullabies. Don't waste bread, keep your coat close, listen before you open the door at night. The First World War lived in my parents' bones like a cold that never left. The second one came from my own. When the war reached our street, I wasn't a hero. I was a skinny boy who learned how to be invisible. I learned where boots paused on a stairwell and where they hurried. I learned that a candle can be seen through a curtain from the street. I learned how quickly grown men can turn into children when they're afraid. I carried a message once or twice, nothing you'd put in a movie, just a folded scrap in my sock and the hot fear that my face would give me away. You don't get over that kind of learning. It becomes part of you, like a scar you can't see until winter. After the war, there was rubble, paperwork, and long lines of people trying to become legal somewhere, anywhere. A church group sponsored me to come to America because I could work with my hands. On the ship, the ocean was calm, but the men were not. We stood shoulder to shoulder, pretending we weren't watching the horizon like it might turn into another disaster. When we arrived, a clerk looked at my name, frowned, and asked if there was something simpler. I said, John. Not because I wanted to disappear, but because I needed a name that could earn me a job. New York didn't greet me with fireworks. It greeted me with noise and stares. I worked in kitchens, then in a shop, then wherever someone would pay cash without asking too many questions. I saved pennies like they were vows. I learned to smile at insults and keep moving. And then I met Mary. She wasn't glamorous. She was real, which is rarer. I met her in a neighborhood bakery where the air smelled like warm sugar and tired wrists. I was counting change for a coffee I shouldn't have bought, and the woman behind the counter said, "Honey, you're short." Before I could put the cup down, Mary stepped forward and slid a nickel onto the counter like it was nothing. She didn't look at me like a charity case. She looked at me like a man. Then she said, "Pay me back when you can," and she smiled as if she just reminded me the world still had decent people in it. That sentence built more of my life than any paycheck. We married young by today's standards. We didn't have a wedding that would impress anyone. We had a second-hand table, a radio that caught ball games in the middle of a sentence, and neighbors who knocked with borrowed sugar and stayed long enough to tell you the truth. Our romance wasn't loud. It was steady, her hand on my shoulder when I came home tired, my palm on her back when we crossed a street, the two of us laughing in the dark because the heat had gone out again and all we could do was make it a joke. By 1963 we had a child, bills, and a calendar full of maybe. The country felt like it was speeding up. People talked about big dreams on television, but in our hallway people talked about rent. When the shop cut hours, and then cut men, I told myself I was protecting Mary by staying calm. What I was really doing was swallowing everything. War taught me that feelings are a luxury. Mary tried to teach me the opposite. One night, after Frank from down the hall left a paper bag of groceries at our door and pretended it was extra, Mary set the soup on the table and said, "John, look at me." I did. Her face was tired, but her eyes were clear. "Promise me something," she said. "If you're scared, say it out loud. Don't make me guess." That was my choice, keep acting like the strong man who never breaks, or trust the woman who'd already seen me break in 100 small ways. I opened my mouth. I wanted to give her what she deserved. But the words stuck, like my throat had learned a different language. All I managed was, "We'll be fine." Mary nodded the way you nod when you don't want to start a fight, and she reached across the table and took my hand anyway. Her fingers were warm. Mine were cold. Back in this room, Emma is quiet. The phone is still face down, like she's honoring the deal we made. I slide the envelope onto the table again. My hands are steadier now, not because I'm brave, but because I'm tired of hiding. I lift the flap, and a photograph slips out, Mary in our tiny kitchen, hair escaping her pins, holding an apple like it's a treasure. Behind the photo is a folded letter with a date stamped in ink, 1963. I unfold it. The first line hits me like a hand on the chest, "John, I love you, but I can't live next to you if you won't live with me." A phone rang in the hallway at 2:11 a.m., and I knew, before anyone said a word, that it wasn't the kind of call that asks for a favor. The ring wasn't louder than any other ring, but it carried a weight. Even now, 95 years old, I can hear that sound and my hands remember how to go numb. Emma sits across from me with Mary's letter open between us. The photo of my wife in our tiny kitchen is face up, like she's still here, like she might reach for the apple again and smile at me for making a joke out of nothing. I look at the words Mary wrote in 1963, "I can't live next to you if you won't live with me," and I realize something that hurts in a clean, honest way, she wasn't threatening me. She was begging me. She was telling me what love requires. If you're watching, this is where the story stops being nostalgic. This is the part where a man has to admit the truth about himself. Back then, after the shop cut hours, I took whatever work I could find. Some nights I drove deliveries through streets that smelled like wet asphalt and fried onions. Some mornings I showed up at construction sites and waited with other men, hoping a foreman would point at me. I'd come home exhausted, proud I'd brought something, ashamed it wasn't enough. And Mary, God, Mary, she never kept score the way the world does now. She kept a home. She kept us. But there was a shadow that followed me into every room. War teaches you to stay quiet. It teaches you that if you don't make noise, maybe you won't be noticed. It teaches you to hold your breath until danger passes. The problem is, danger doesn't always pass. Sometimes it moves in and builds a house inside you. Mary noticed long before I did. She'd ask simple questions. What are you thinking? Are you okay? And I'd answer with facts. Rent is due Friday. The truck needs gas. The baby's asleep. I thought I was being responsible. What I was really doing was refusing to hand her my fear. In 1963, people didn't talk about therapy. Men didn't talk about feelings unless they were drunk, and even then they called it talking nonsense. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't unfaithful. I didn't raise a hand. But I built a wall anyway, brick by brick, with silence. And silence, I've learned, can bruise a marriage just as surely as any storm. There was one evening I still see like a scene from a film. The radiator clanked. The baby, our little boy, was fussy, then finally quiet. Mary sat at the table with a notebook and the bills spread out like a deck of bad cards. She tapped her pencil, then looked up at me. John, she said, I need you to be here. I was there, physically. I was leaning on the counter, looking at the sink. So I said the dumbest thing a man can say when a woman is asking for his heart. I said, I am here. Mary didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just set the pencil down and folded her hands. No, she said. You're in the room. You're not with me. That sentence was a fork in the road. I could have stepped toward her, admitted I was scared, admitted I felt small, admitted I still woke up some nights hearing boots on stairs that weren't there. Or I could do what I'd always done, swallow it, stiffen my shoulders, and hope time would fix what I refused to touch. I chose the second one. I told myself I was protecting her from my darkness. I told myself I didn't want to burden her. The truth is uglier, I didn't want to look weak. I didn't want to hand anyone the power to hurt me again. So I stayed strong, and Mary grew lonely beside me. The world around us kept moving. Kennedy was on television. Men argued politics in the barbershop. Kids played stickball in the street. On Sundays the hallway smelled like roast chicken from someone's apartment, and Frank would knock and say, "You coming down to watch the game?" And I'd go, and for a few hours I could pretend I was normal. I could laugh. I could clap a man on the back. But when I came home, the laughter didn't follow me through the door. Then life did what life does. It tested us in a way that didn't care about my pride. I won't give you details, because some things shouldn't be turned into pictures in a stranger's mind. But one day a doctor used a gentle voice, and our world went quiet. We lost a child. Years later, we lost another, different circumstances, same empty chair. You don't get over that. You learn to carry it the way you carry an old injury, it changes how you walk. Mary grieved out loud. She needed to talk, to remember, to say the names. I grieved like a soldier, by tightening every strap and marching forward. I went to work. I fixed things. I paid bills. I became a machine that could function. And in doing that, I left my wife alone in the one place she should have been held. The second time loss came, Mary looked at me and said, very quietly, I can't do this by myself. She didn't mean the chores. She meant the pain. I stared at the floor and said, we have to be strong. She nodded, and I watched something in her eyes close, like a lamp going out in a room you still need to live in. That's the turning point people don't talk about. Marriages don't always end with a slam of a door. Sometimes they end with a woman realizing the man she loves won't let her reach him. Back in my room now, I am staring at Mary's letter, and my mouth tastes like regret. Emma's voice is small. Did she leave? She asks. I look at the photo again. Mary's smile is half tired, half teasing, like she's still trying to pull me back toward the light. She tried not to, I say. She tried for years. And then I hear myself add something I've avoided saying for decades, because saying it makes it real. The night she finally walked out, I whisper, was the night I decided to beg, and realized I didn't know how. Emma's hand hovers near the phone, face down on the table. Her thumb twitches, the way people's thumbs do when silence feels too big. I have to choose again, let this become a neat story for someone else, or let it stay honest and messy. Emma, I say, if you turn that phone over now, you'll get your clip. But you'll lose the reason I'm telling you this. She freezes. And in that stillness, I unfold the next page of Mary's letter, the part one never read until tonight. The fire alarm went off at 9:42, 3 flat beeps, a pause, then 3 more, like a heart monitor that couldn't decide if you were still alive. In this place, alarms are usually drills. Still, the sound makes everyone look up with the same tired fear. Chairs scrape. Walker feet shuffle. Somebody mutters, not again. Emma reached for the phone on our table out of habit, and I heard myself say, leave it. Not angry. Just certain. If we're going to run, I told her, we'll run after I finish this. We sat there anyway, the beeps echoing down the hall, and I unfolded the next page of Mary's letter, the part one never read. I told myself it was lost. The truth is I was afraid of what it would ask of me. Mary wrote in neat, stubborn lines. No poetry. No blame. Just the kind of truth that doesn't raise its voice and still leaves a bruise. John, it said, you think silence makes you strong. It doesn't. It makes you absent. I swallowed. My mouth went dry. Emma didn't move. The alarms kept beeping like they were timing my breathing. The paper smelled faintly of old soap, like it had spent time in a drawer with clean handkerchiefs. A small thing fell out when I lifted the page, one of Mary's hairpins, dark and bent. I hadn't seen it in decades. In my mind I could see her pushing stray strands back while she cooked, her lips moving as she counted bills, the little sigh she'd give when she tried to make worry sound like a joke. That hairpin was more intimate than any photograph, because it proved she'd been real in a way I'd tried to forget. Mary's words pulled me back to our kitchen, the one in Queens, where the radiator clanked and the window rattled when buses passed. I could see her at the table, sleeves rolled to the elbow, hands smelling like soap and onions. I could also see myself, standing in the doorway, acting like a man who had everything under control while my insides were shaking. She wrote, I know why you do it. I've seen your eyes in the dark. I've watched you flinch at sudden noises and then pretend you didn't. I'm not asking you to be different overnight. I'm asking you to be here with me while we're still together. That line hit harder than any argument. Because it wasn't a threat. It was a deadline. If you're around my age, if you've been married, or loved someone deeply, you know what it's like to hear a woman say, I don't need money. I need you. And to realize you've been giving the wrong currency. Back then, I thought love was proof. Pay the rent. Fix the faucet. Bring home groceries in a brown paper bag. I didn't understand that Mary was begging for presents, not provisions. The romance between us was never loud, but it was constant, the way she'd warm her hands on my coat when I came in from the cold, the way she'd hum along with the radio while she swept, the way she'd touch my shoulder in passing like she was checking that I hadn't disappeared. Mary kept going. You don't have to tell me everything. Tell me one thing. One honest thing a day. A fear, a hope, a memory, anything. Let me hold it with you. If you're scared about money, say it. If you're scared about the future, say it. If you're scared you'll lose me, say it. I'm already here. One thing a day. I stared at that, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, shame with a doorway in it. Shame that didn't crush you, shame that invited you to change. The alarm stopped. A voice over the speaker announced it was a test. Relief rolled through the building like a small wave. People laughed, the way older people laugh when the worst thing didn't happen. In our room, nothing changed. Emma's eyes were wet. She blinked fast, embarrassed, like she'd betrayed her job by being human. I read the last part out loud, because I owed Mary that much, even if she could no longer hear it. If you can't do this, she wrote, I will still love you. But I can't keep living beside a man who's not living beside me. I want a husband, not a ghost. A ghost. That was it. That was what I became, steady, polite, useful, and unreachable. Here comes my choice in this moment, and it's not a dramatic one. It's the kind of choice men make in quiet rooms that decide the rest of their lives. I could fold the letter, slide it back into the envelope, and go back to being a safe old man with a safe story. Or I could finally do what Mary asked me to do in 1963, say one honest thing. I looked at Emma, then at the phone lying face down between us. Do you have someone you love? I asked her. She hesitated, then nodded. My dad, she said. He's not good at talking. He always says he's fine. I felt an old, sharp tenderness, the kind that comes when you recognize your own mistakes in someone else's family. Then don't wait, I told her. You think you have time. Time is a liar. My hand shook as I reached for the phone, not to record, not to post, not to prove anything, just to use it the way it was meant to be used. I turned it over, and the screen lit my fingers like moonlight. I didn't unlock it. I pushed it toward her. Call my grandson, I said. Not to film. To talk. Emma stared at me. Right now. Right now, I said. Before I get brave and change my mind. She dialed. The ringing sounded different from the old hallway phone, cleaner, lighter, but my chest reacted the same way. One ring. Two. A voice answered, sleepy and cautious. Hello. My throat closed. I almost waved Emma off. I almost returned to silence. Then Mary's sentence came back like a hand on my back, tell me one honest thing. So I leaned toward the phone and said the first honest thing I could manage. It's Grandpa, I said. I'm sorry I've been hard to reach. I don't want to be a ghost anymore. On the other end, there was a pause long enough to hurt. I could hear breathing, like he'd sat up in bed and was deciding whether to protect himself from disappointment. Then my grandson breathed out and said, okay. I'm listening. That's where I'll leave you, because the next words are the ones that can change a family, or break what's left of it. The call didn't end with a speech. It ended with breathing. Mine, his, uneven at first, then slower, like two men learning the same room. I don't remember every word I said to my grandson that night, and that's a mercy. What I remember is the decision not to fill the space. For most of my life, silence was armor. That night, silence became an invitation. When we hung up, the room felt larger, as if a wall had been moved an inch outward. Emma wiped her eyes and pretended she had something important to check in the hallway. I let her go. Some moments don't need witnesses. Sleep didn't come easy. It never does when you've told the truth late in life. I lay there listening to the building settle, pipes knocking, someone coughing down the hall, a distant television arguing with itself. I thought about Mary, about how often she'd waited for me to choose her over my habits. If you're my age, you know habits don't feel like choices while you're making them. They feel like gravity. You only notice them when something finally lifts you. Morning came thin and gray. Breakfast was oatmeal that tasted like paper and coffee that remembered being strong. I took my tray to the window. Outside, a delivery truck idled, and a man half my age argued with a clipboard. Life moving, always moving. I realized then that the world I kept saying I didn't understand wasn't cruel. It was fast. And speed is only kind to people who've already decided who they are. A man named Walter sat down across from me without asking. We'd nodded at each other for months and never said more than morning. He pointed at my coffee. They still burn it, he said. I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that surprises you. Walter told me he'd been a bus driver. 40 years. Retired early because his hands shook. Thought I'd missed the road, he said. Turns out I missed the people who sat down and told me their whole lives in 10 stops. We drank our bad coffee together. No plan. No purpose. Just company. It felt like 1963 again in the only way that matters. Here's where the choice shows up one last time. I could have stayed inside that small comfort and called it enough. 95 is an easy age to stop reaching. No one would blame you. Or I could risk disappointment again and make myself available, which is another way of saying vulnerable. Mary's voice, clear as ever, answered for me, one honest thing. So I asked Emma if she could help me set a standing rule. Not a schedule. A rule. Every afternoon at 4, I would go to the common room with a notebook. Anyone could sit. No phones on the table. No fixing. Just listening. Emma raised her eyebrows like I'd suggested a small rebellion. You sure? She asked. I'm sure, I said. If no one comes, I'll listen to myself. They came. Not all at once. A woman named Ruth who used to sew dresses and missed the sound of scissors. A quiet fellow who talked about fishing like it was a prayer. Walter came back with better jokes. We didn't solve anything. We remembered. We named people who'd loved us badly and well. We let the air hold our words without turning them into advice. That evening, my grandson called me. I hadn't asked him to. That mattered. He told me about his job, about being tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. I told him one true thing about fear. Just one. We agreed to talk again. No promises bigger than that. Big promises are where men like me get into trouble. If you've listened this long, here's what I owe you, not a lesson, just a handrail. We weren't happier in 1963 because life was easier. It wasn't. We were happier because we practiced being reachable. We knocked on doors. We sat at tables. We admitted when we were scared and let someone else carry it for a minute. Then we carried theirs. It's not nostalgia. It's mechanics. I still don't understand everything about this world. I don't understand how a man can sit with 1,000 friends in his pocket and feel alone. But I understand one thing very clearly now, and I paid too much to learn it late: strength isn't silence. Strength is staying. Tonight I'll put Mary's letter back in the envelope. Not to hide it, but to keep it. Tomorrow at 4, I'll bring the notebook. And when someone sits down and asks why I bother at my age, I'll tell them the truth I wish I'd told sooner. I'm 95, I'll say. I don't have much time left. That's why I finally decided to be present.